All right, so we are continuing our discussion about sets. Okay, and if we just recall what we have been doing, so yesterday we started our discussion about different types of sets. Okay, so first thing before we discussed various types were equality of sets. Okay, wherein we say that two sets are equal if they are contained in each other. That is, if A is subset of B and B is in itself subset of A. Right? That's when we say the two sets are equal. In other words, this means that all the elements of A are also the elements of B. Okay, only then we say that the two sets are equal. After that, we discussed different types of sets. Okay, so the first set we discussed was called universal set, right? Which is basically the set of all the possible elements that you could have drawn in context of a particular problem. Okay, so it is like the universe of all possible elements relevant to a particular problem. Okay, and we discussed a lot of examples wherein we argued that we should always try to search for a universal set which is optimum. Optimum in the sense the size is not too large and it covers all our cases, right? And universal set we normally represent by u, and this is context dependent, what problem or what property you are trying to define. In that sense you can find the universal set for that problem. Okay, like if I give you an example that we discussed yesterday also, that suppose I tell you uh, I want to draw a subset of students who are taking discrete maths course, right? So, what would be the universal set? Okay, you can keep on giving me a lot of sets, say all students in 2020 batch, or all students in the entire college, or all students throughout the world, right? But always we choose the optimum one, which is the smallest. Okay, and the reason for this is to be within the limits of our discreteness. Okay, not increase our size too much, that will be heavy on our resources. After that, the next set we discussed was the empty set or null set, which is basically a set which has no elements. Okay, and we discussed that empty set is actually subset of all these sets, and in particular it's a proper subset of all non-empty sets. The next thing we discussed was a set called a singleton set, which is a set which has a size of 1. Okay, so before that we also saw something called cardinality of set. Okay, so what is the cardinality of set? Cardinality of a set A, either represented by this or n of A, is basically what are the total number of elements in that set. Okay, and when we talk about elements, we are talking about the members of it. Okay, now if we consider sets which are made up of sets itself, there we are not concerned about what are the elements of those sets, but only what are the overall elements of this set we are talking. Like if I talk about sets, say 1, 1, 2. Okay, so in this case your comma separates the members of the set, so total elements in the set is just 2. Okay, you are not concerned with what is the composition of the members, you are only counting the total number of members of that set. Okay, that is known as cardinality of the set, and those sets which have just cardinality of 1 are known as singleton sets, right? And the last thing we discussed yesterday was the disjoint sets. Okay, so what are disjoint sets? Anyone recalls what are disjoint sets? Yes, class. Yes, disjoint sets are those sets which have no common elements. Okay, so even if you have one common element, then they are not disjoint. Okay, any two sets having no common elements at all are your disjoint sets. Okay, so this is what we had discussed yesterday. So what we are going to do discuss today is a very powerful concept in sets, which is known as power sets. Okay, and then we'll start with the set operations. So let us start. All right. Okay, so let us see what is this power set. So power set of a set is said to be set of all the subsets of that set. Okay, so if I have a set S, okay, its power set is denoted by P of S. And what is this set? This set is actually a set of all the subsets of that set. Okay, so if I'm trying to make power set of set S, then set of all the subsets of this set S is actually our power set. Okay, so what are the elements of this set? Are they ordinary numbers? Okay, I told you that power set is also a set, but what are its members? Its members are the subsets of the given set S. So what kind of elements does this power set have? Very good. The elements of sets are not ordinary numbers or objects, they are itself sets. Okay, like you are always going to see curly brackets in with them. Okay, except for of course the empty set. Okay, this is something which you always need to remember, that uh, this elements or members of a power set are always these sets. Okay, because what we are saying is, what is a power set? Power set is the set of all possible subset of a given set. Okay, so that means when I'm talking about making a power set of a given set, I'm going to have the members which are all sets. Okay, and what kind of sets? They are going to be subsets of the set which you are going to for which you are going to define the power set. Right, now what are the possible members? Okay, so far we already know two basic properties. If I have a given set S, what are the two basic subsets which I always know? Very good. So two things I always know for sure, that two subsets which I for sure know for any given set is the phi, because I know that empty set is subset of all the sets, and I know the set itself is subset of a set is subset of itself. So two sets are always going to be the members of your power set, that is your phi and your S. Okay, other than this, what are there? So all the elements that you have in your set, they are going to be the possible subsets of this power set. Okay, so let us see some examples incrementally. So suppose I say I give you a null set. Okay, so what is the power set of null set? So as we argued in the previous section, that every set is a subset of itself and the phi set. Okay, since the set itself is your null set, so the only component you have is phi. Right, now suppose I give you a set, say A, which has just one element, one. Okay, and I tell you what is the power set of this set. Okay, so before you start enumerating anything, you should always add two things. So first thing is phi, and other thing is the set itself. Okay, which is 1. Okay, never write 1. It is always 1 within curly brackets because it is the set itself, right? And then in between you can fill up all other subsets, right? But since there is just one member S, so this is the only possible subset you have, right? Now similarly, if I have a set, say 1 and 2, so what are the possible subsets? Always write the null set and the set itself first. Okay, after that start filling the other members. So what do you need now? You need to write all possible subsets of this set. What are the possible subsets of this set 1 and 2? Remember the subset definition? A subset of a given set means it has some elements of that set, right? So what are the possible subsets? So you can see there are two elements here, right? So one possible subset could be 1, right? Other possible subset could be 2, right? And so on. Right? So now can you try and tell me what are the subsets of this third set? Okay. So basically, as I said, always write first the ones which we know. One is 5, and one is, of course, the set itself, 1, 2, and 3. Right? After that, write all possible combinations of the Okay, so let me state. So after that, what you need to do, write all possible combinations of the members, but within curly braces. Okay, why within curly braces? Because remember the main rule that I told you, that all the members of the power set are themselves sets. Okay, so they should always be within curly braces. Okay, so we have 5, we have 1, we have 2, we have 3, right? So these are the singleton sets. Now, what are the other possible combinations I can have? Now, one at a time I've taken. Now I'll take two at a time. Very good. I 1, 2, 1, 3, 2, 3. Right? 1, 2, 3 is already there. Okay, so this is very simple. Like you have studied it, so you know all this stuff. But what you need to remember for generalization, because now the examples could get complex. What you should always remember for generalization is that this property, that all the members of the power set are themselves sets. Okay, now suppose I tell you what is the power set of this set. Okay, this set. Now, can anyone tell me? Okay, now it's basically, if you look at this, this is power set of 5 actually, right? Because power set of 5 is this. Okay, so I am now taking twice power set. Okay, okay, we'll apply same rule. As I said, always follow the general rule. So how do we make a power set? Okay, we know for sure that there are two subsets we know for all sets. One is the phi and the set itself. What is the set itself? It is, yes, it is phi in curly brackets, right? So this is how you can make power set of this. Is this example clear to everyone? How we got a phi and phi? Yes. Is everyone able to know like why these two are different? Okay. Remember we discussed yesterday. This is a, if I write just phi, what is its cardinality? No, cardinality of just phi is 0. And if I write within curly braces, it's 1. Remember empty folder and folder inside empty folder. Okay. So cardinality is 1. Excellent. Okay. Similarly, can you solve this one? Suppose I say A is 1. Tell me what is power set of A. Okay, so I've given you a set, singleton set A, which is 1, and now I want you to find power set of A. Okay, state the elements. Okay, I understand you're saying 4. That's correct actually, but what are the elements? Okay, do it by the basic rules that we discussed. Yes, class. What will be the elements of power set of A? Okay, good. Yeah. So Shivam, some of them you have missed. Okay, so let us see. So when I say power set of A, it's always good to write what is the power set of A. Okay, what is the power set of this? The power set of this is 5 and the set itself. Right? Now I know this is my set. Okay, now I can again apply the same rule. What is the power set of a given set? It is the 5, at least 5, and the set itself. So let us write the full set. 5 and 1. Okay, After that, now we are going to write the elements one by one as subsets. Okay, remember, like we did here, we choose one members of the set and added curly braces outside them. So the first member of the set is 5, so I'll add a curly brace outside it. Okay, second is 1, but not a simple one. It is within the curly braces 1. Okay, so what should I have? How many curly braces do I need to add for 1? See, remember the general rule. The general rule is you always add empty set and the set itself. After that, whatever are the members of the set, add curly braces outside them. So there was 5, so I added a pair of curly braces. Okay, and then I have 1, so I'll add a pair of curly braces. Okay, so that means I'll have 2 curly braces outside 1. Okay, so a number of you have made this mistake. Is this clear to everyone why there will be 2 pair of curly braces with 1? Yes? So those of you who had written with single, is this clear? Okay, so always follow the general rule. If you know the general rule, you'll never be stuck, even if I take it thousands of times. The general rule is always simplify what is your set, first thing. Second thing is add the empty set and the set itself. After that, whatever are the members of the set, just add curly braces with them. Okay, so that is something which you should always follow. Okay, is this clear? This example is clear to everyone? I'll be sharing more examples in tutorial, but is this one clear? Okay, great. Okay, so let us now try to generalize in terms of uh, what should be the total number of elements of a power set in general. If I assume that the size of a set is n elements, okay, so okay, that is correct. But let's try to see if this is correct, right? So for a set with whose size is, let me write some other notation. For a set whose size is n, the power set has size of 2 raised power n, right? But let us just confirm it. So we know size of phi is 0. And what is the size of power set of phi? You can see it's just one element, right? Similarly, the size of this one is 1. And if I see the size of the power set of 1, you can see it's 2, right? Which is 2 raised power 1. Right? Similarly here, the size of the set was 3, right? And when we took the power set, its size was 8, right? 2 to the power 3. So in general, when you take the power set of a set with n elements, it is 2 to the power n, right? So is this clear to everyone? Power set? Okay, excellent. Okay, now I come to a very, very powerful notion in set theory, which often is a point of confusion. Okay, so I guess yesterday some people had also asked about it. So let us just clarify it. Yes. So when I say set containment, I remember I think Jamil had asked yesterday when we say does a set contain itself, right? So what do you mean by containment, right? So let's try to differentiate. Okay, so before I answer this question, again, let us try to differentiate between these two. Okay, what is this operator? The first operator, sorry, belongs to, or you can say membership, right? And what is the second operator? Subset, right? So when you ask this question, does a set contain itself? If you mean by containment the subset relation, right, then definitely every set contains itself, right? Because we know trivially that every set is subset of itself, right? But if you ask the question in terms of containment, that containment means it's a member, is every set a member of itself, then what do you think should be your answer? Do you get my question? So I'm saying, is every set, does a set contain itself? Right? Yes, no. And containment, I don't mean subset. Okay, now I mean a set is a member of itself. Okay, so some people saying no. Anyone with a yes? Nobody with a yes? Okay, anyone more supporting no? Yes, sure. So the question I'm asking is, does a set contain itself? Okay, in general, we say the answer is yes, only if we mean by containment the subset relation. That means when we say A is this notation, B, I mean A is contained in B. If I use containment definition in terms of subset relation, then yes, A is does contain itself. Okay, in terms of subset. Why? Because A trivially is subset of A, right? So a set contains itself. But the question now I am asking is, if I talk about context of containment in terms of membership, right? That is A a member of A? Then what is your answer? Yes or no? Okay, the answer is no. Okay, and this is not a very straightforward no. Okay, if I say, suppose a set of sets, a set of all sets. Okay, it's kind of a generalization of same question. Suppose I say a set of all sets. Is this a set? It's something related to power set, right? Power set is a set of sets, right? Or is a set of sets, all sets a set? Yes, no? Excellent, Zishan. It actually leads to a very gray area of mathematics, I would say, which is undoubtedly a gray area, but very interesting, right? It's known as Russell's paradox. Exactly. Uh, so before I just go into this, all sort of this field, although it's not relevant, but it's very interesting. So, does anyone know what is a paradox? Paradox? I mean, it's slightly different than a little bit deviate from the course, but this is very interesting. So, does everyone know a paradox? What is a paradox, class? Okay, so whoever has says, very good. A self-contradicting statement is actually known as a paradox. Okay. So I'm sure in your physics you might have seen a lot of paradox, right? Have you ever heard about this very famous paradox called a liar paradox? Okay, so in general, a paradox is something which is self-contradicting. Okay, that means it contradicts the statement itself. Okay, like the liar, very famous paradox of liar paradox is, if I say, suppose I am lying. Okay, so what does it mean? What do you infer if I say I am lying? Yeah. So if I am saying I am lying, so you would infer that actually I am not lying, because if I am saying I am lying, so that means I am not lying, right? Because I am a liar, so whatever I'm saying is wrong. So if I am saying I am not lying, I'm actually contradicting what I'm saying, right? So it is basically, you will never be able to infer any conclusion in this, because whenever you will feel that I'm not lying, okay, that means whatever I was saying is truth. Okay, and you will keep on circling around, right? Similarly, is the Russell's paradox. Okay, so since Russell's paradox is very much related to our course, so let me just quickly state it. What Russell's paradox states is, suppose I consider a set R, okay, to be a set of all such sets that are not members of itself. Yes. Okay, so it seems that a lot of you have been through this. There's a very nice way to actually prove that the solution to this. Okay, so let R be a set of all sets which are not members of itself. Okay, so this is the definition of R. If I write it formally, it's something like this: R is X such that X does not belong to X. Okay, so R is set of all those sets which are not member of itself. Okay, let us now try to argue. Okay, let's first see this case that R belongs to this set. Okay, so R belongs to R. Okay, so if R belongs to R, that means R contains itself, right? But what is the definition of R? The definition of R is that set which does not contain itself, right? So it means actually R does not belong to R, right? Now let that means my initial assumption was wrong. Okay, so let me take the other way assumption. Suppose I say R does not contain itself, or R is not member of itself. Okay, then by definition of set, what do I have? Because R is set of all those sets which are member of itself. So what do I have by definition then? If R is not a member of R, then by definition, what do I have? Very good. R is a member of R. Okay, so you can see there's a contradictory statement, and this is what is known as a paradox. Okay, and what is the solution to this paradox? What Russell suggested is actually they show by a very famous argument by contradiction and using something called Cantor's diagonal argument, that basically such a set does not exist. Okay, such a set does not exist. Okay, and they said that since set is a very fundamental unit of mathematics, so we should avoid such kind of set theory where we define such sets. Okay, so in general they proved using contradiction that it's not possible to define everything as a set. Okay, so basically to avoid yourself to go into such areas, what you the safer side they took is the solution to this is that not include such sets, okay, which are subset of themselves. So a set of all sets does not contain itself. Okay, such a set does not actually exist. Is that clear? See, more or less, if you're not getting all of it, at least paradox part should be clear to you. Is this clear? Okay, and this is very very relevant in computer science. You're going to hit to this problem again and again. Okay, again something very extra, not very relevant to this course, is there's a very famous problem in computer science called the halting problem. Okay, which is also based on a similar paradox. Okay, so let me write the statement of this problem. So the statement of this problem is, can we write a program, okay, which detects an infinite loop? Right, again the answer, Jamil, is in on the same lines. By contradiction we show that it's not possible, right? But this was a problem which, like Alan Turing and all, it kind of frustrated computer science for a long time. Okay, and you will see, you will be hitting this problem again when you study theory of computation, right? But again, these such problems are paradoxical. Okay, and the only way to this answer is no, it does not exist. And how do you prove that? All of them mostly follow proof by contradiction, which we'll study in this course. Okay, so you can again time and again see how whatever we are going to study in this course is going to hit you back, right? So this was all about paradoxes, just to have that mind clear that these are also problems where, mathematics does not have a solution, so they simply prove that it does not exist. Okay, so any questions on that? We'll come back to our sets. Any questions? All right, excellent. Okay, So now let's come back here. So now what is the difference between membership and subset operator? Why I am focused on this is a lot of very confusing questions normally come with the use of this. Okay, I'll also be sharing them in tutorial. So let us be clear about them once and for all. Okay, so when I mean a member, okay, so that means it should be an element of that set. Okay, so whenever I use a membership operator, it is for a member. Okay, but whenever I use a subset sign, it is for a set, because a subset itself is a set. Okay, so you can see the first statement is true because one is a member of the set containing one, right? But if I write one is subset of one, it's not true because one is not a set, right? But the correct way would be if I put one in curly braces and I say that this is subset of one, this is true, right? So let us try to use this membership and subset operators wisely. So can you tell me which of the two statements is true or both? Which one do you think is true? First one or second one? Okay. So two people saying second. Okay, everyone saying second. Anyone with first? Excellent. So everyone is saying the correct one. Okay. So S is not subset of power set, right? Because just to take an example, suppose A is 1, 2. Power set of A is 5, 1, 2, 1, 2, right? So in general, we already know that every set is a member. So this we already know that this is true. But now let's see if why is this one false. Okay, for any set to be a subset of a power set, all the members of A should be a members of power set. Okay, so if you look at the members of A, it is 1 and 2, right? But you cannot see them here, right? And the reason is when you make a power set, you need to consider subsets, okay, which means you need to add set notation to it. So ideally it would never be true that a set is a subset of its power set. Okay, but if I write this, is this true? Great. So now tell me, what about this one? Which one of this is true, which one of this is false? You need to think a little bit. What do you think? Okay, so someone said, so it's better you write, I know who said. Okay, so Deepak, Jamil claim both is true. Ankita says both is true. Excellent. So everyone is saying both is true, which is actually correct, that both are true. And why is it so? Again, let's take a trivial example so that we are clear about it. So we know that why first one, second one is true, because we know that empty set is a subset of every set. Okay, and since power set is collection of all subsets, so definitely this is true, right? As we know, if I make power set of any set, the first element I always consider is the empty set, right? But now the question is phi also a subset of this, right? Again, this is also trivially true because we know that empty set is subset of all the subsets, and it's actually a proper subset of all non-empty sets. Okay, so that is why both statements are actually true. Okay, whereas it was not true in the other case, right? So empty set is actually the only set which is member as well as subset of power set. Okay, is this clear? The two examples. Okay, excellent. Please, anyone, if you don't understand any point, please do stop me there. Okay, so this was the basics of sets, different types of sets. Okay, now what we move on to is a very powerful representation of sets, which are known as Venn diagrams. Okay, so what is a Venn diagram? A Venn diagram is actually a pictorial representation of sets, okay, in which your sets are kind of represented by closed areas. Okay, so suppose normally what you have in this context, you have a universal set. Okay, remember the universal set, a set from which you can draw all the elements. So universal set is normally drawn by an enclosed area, a rectangle, and all the sets or subsets you draw from it, they are shown in form of circles inside this universal set. Okay, so let us see some examples. So always remember, the rectangle part denotes your universal set. Okay, and all the sets which are drawn from it, the subsets, they are shown by these discs or circles. Okay, so this will be very important when we move to the properties of sets. So I have shown three figures on the screen. Can you tell me what each figure represents? What can you infer from this first figure? Tell me in terms of the notations which we have studied, or the kinds of sets we have studied so far. Excellent. Is it a proper subset or is it a subset? Just a subset. Proper, right? A is a proper subset of B. And if I had it something like this, A, and overlapping it was B, then improper subset, or we can say A is equal to B, right? Excellent. What about picture 2? Excellent. They are disjoint. Why they are disjoint? Because we know disjoint sets are those sets which have no common elements, right? And what about third? Third is just some arbitrary set which has some common elements, right? So there's no such proper definition. So it has some common elements as well. Okay, they are clearly not disjoint. Fine. So let us now, with this pictorial representation, move to the second half of the sets, which are the set operations. Okay, and let's try to see them in context of these diagrams also. Okay, so the first set operation that we are going to discuss is union operation. Okay, so let us see what do we mean when we say the union operation. The union of two sets A and B is denoted by this sign. It is the set that contains those elements which are either in A or in B or in both. Okay, so any element which belongs to either of the two or even both is what we say belongs to the union. So if we write it formally in terms of set definition, the set builder form, so A union B is set of all those elements X such that X belongs to A or X belongs to B, right? So that means it is like a overall combination, the entire combination of the two sets. Okay, like if I give you an example, suppose set A is IT 2020 batch and set B is EC 2020 batch. The union of two is the total students in both IT and ECE batch, right? So let us see some examples. Okay, so if I apply union on these two sets, what do I need to have? I need to have a set of all the elements which belong to both of them. Okay, so what should be my resulting set? Right? So note that 3 is twice, right? But remember, in set notation, we represent each object just once, right? So if I write this, say 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, in set notation, it has to be distinct. Okay, this is something called multi-set, where you have multiplicity. So this we are going to avoid. We are just dealing with sets. So you take just a single occurrence of every object. Okay, now what about this one? A set which has two elements and an empty set. Okay, remember, the union of set should contain the elements in both. Excellent, it is 1 2, but what property do you infer from this? If I have any set actually A and I take a union with 5, so what should be the resultant answer? It should always be A, right? Why is it so? Because phi has no elements. So all the elements that you have of the union are of the A set. Okay. What about this last one? Excellent. So it will simply be all four elements because there is no repetition. So all four elements would be there. Excellent. So what is union of two sets? Union of two sets is simply a collection of all the elements belonging to both the sets. Okay. And if you look in terms of the Venn diagram, so union is actually this entire blue shaded region that you can see. Okay. Full A, full B. Right? So intersection is what we'll discuss next, but this entire shaded region is your union. Okay, so now let us see the intersection one. Okay, so what is now intersection? Intersection of two sets is basically that set which contains those elements which are in both A and B. So it should be common in both of them. Okay, so if I write in set builder notation, A intersection B is set of all those elements X such that X is in A and, not a or but and. That means if I am talking about any element, it should be present in both of them. If it's not present in both, then it's not part of intersection, right? So what should be the answers in these examples? Excellent. So first one is 3 because 3 is the only common element. In the next one, excellent, it is 5, right? And what do we in general infer? If I have any set A and I take an intersection with 5, what should be my answer? It will always be 5, right? Why? Because 5 has no elements. Okay, so the common elements will always be 0 because there's nothing that you can have in common between the two, right? Similarly, for the last one, there's nothing common, so it's a 5, right? uh, okay, so in terms of Venn diagram, if we look at the intersection element, it is the common part. As you can see, the part which is shared by two sets is what we call as the intersection. Okay, so union was full of A, full of B, including the common part, but intersection is only the common elements, right? So this is your union and intersection. Union is a set of all those elements which belong to A or to B, right? And intersection is set of all those elements which belong to A and B. That means in this, the constraint is the element should belong to both. In this, it can belong to either one of them or both. That is allowed, right? So let us see some properties of this. Okay. Okay. So let us first see some properties of intersection. So when we talk about intersection, we know that any element which belongs to A intersection B, okay, we know that it means that it belongs to A as well as it belongs to B, right? And we know that A intersection B is also a set. Okay, so any element which belongs to A intersection B also belongs to set A, right? So that means we can write that A intersection B is actually a subset of A, right? Because for subset, there are only two conditions required. One is that this should also be a set, which is true. And second is that all the elements in A should belong to this set, okay, which is again true because we know that any element which belongs to A intersection B definitely belongs to A, right? So A intersection B is a subset of A as well as of B, right? Is this clear? This is very direct from the definition, right? Because whenever we say any element belongs to the intersection, it automatically means it belongs to the set itself, right? And since A intersection B in itself is a set, so we can say that A intersection B is subset of A, right? Similarly, what about union, right? In terms of union, what we know is A union B, right? What does A union B consist of? Okay, so if you look at A union B consists of A as well as of B. Okay, so in terms of the subset notation, what can we infer? Which is contained in what? Okay, so is this true or is this true? Which one is true? A is contained, A is subset of A union B, or A union B is subset of A? Very good. First is correct. Why? You can see from the Venn diagram itself that if I write, if I say true, second is true, then what I mean is all the elements of A union B are also the elements of A, which is not true because all these elements are not in A, right? So first one is true. That is, all elements of A, okay, all elements of A are definitely in A union B, right? And same applies for B also. Okay, so in general, what we have is that given a set A, intersection is a subset of that set, and this set is itself the subset of union. So intersection relies on the left hand side, and the union lies on the right hand side in terms of content, right? Yeah, are these two clear to everyone? Why is it so? Okay, this is very clear from the diagram also. Okay, so if you consider A and B, so A union B is definitely the superset of all of them, right? And this intersection is definitely the smallest one of them. Okay, the common elements. Okay, so in general, we have these relations that given any sets A and B, intersection is a subset of that set, and that given set is itself subset of the union, right? Is this clear to everyone? The two properties? Okay, great. So now let us move to this last property. Okay, so uh, suppose I tell you that A is a subset of B. Okay, so I have a set A, or rather, I have a set A which is subset of B. Okay, what can you say about the intersection? Okay, so what we are saying is A is contained in B. Okay, it may also be equal because we have not neglect that. What can we say about A intersection B? So A intersection B is all the elements which are present in A as well as in B. Okay, so what would be the smallest set which is present in common in both A and B? Okay, since A is contained in B, so definitely it will be A, right? What about union? So in union, what do we want? We want all the elements which are in A as well as in B, right? So I need to have the enclosing set, right? So the answer to this is B. So in general, whenever I have a set is contained in other, union will always be the superset, okay? And intersection will always be the set which is the subset of the given set, right? And this is clear from the Venn diagram also, right? When you consider the intersection, it will be the smaller one, and if you consider the union, it will be the enclosing one, right? Are these properties clear? Okay, excellent. So let me finish with the disjoint sets today. Okay, so now coming back to disjoint sets, but now with the set operation notation. Okay, so if you recall, two sets were said to be disjoint or non-intersecting if they had no elements in common, right? So if I now write it in terms of intersection event, what does it mean? If I have two sets A and B and they have no elements in common, it can be represented by their intersection, right? So if the intersection of two sets is phi, or an empty set, in that case we say that the two sets are disjoint. Okay, so let me repeat, what are disjoint sets? Disjoint sets are those sets which are non-intersecting or which have no elements in common. Okay, so if I have to represent in terms of set operation, it means that the intersection of the two events is actually a null event or a null set, right? So let us see some examples and say whether they are disjoint or not. So is the first example disjoint? No. Why? Because if I do their intersection, the 3 is the common element, right? What about the second one? There are no common elements, so their intersection is 5. So yes, they are disjoint. What about this one? Whenever we take intersection of any set with 5, it is 5, right? So definitely it is disjoint. What about last one? Okay, so the yes or no? So Rishita says no. Okay, so let us do it. If I do intersection of 5 and 5, what is the answer? No elements, no elements. What is the answer? The answer is 5, right? And we know by definition that any two sets which have intersection 5 are disjoint. So definitely, yes, it is also disjoint. Okay. Okay, no issues. Okay. So this was disjoint sets. Okay. From disjoint sets, so any two sets A and B which are disjoint, okay, which means A intersection B is 5. If you take union of those two sets, okay, you take A union B, okay, such as union is known as disjoint union. Okay, let me repeat. What do you mean by disjoint union? Disjoint union is union of those two sets whose intersection is 5. Okay, or union of two disjoint sets is known as disjoint union. Okay, so let me give you an example that if I suppose take 1 2 3 union 3 4 5, is this a disjoint union? No. Why? Because if I take their intersection, it's not 5. They're not disjoint sets, right? But if I take say 1 2 union 3 4, is this a disjoint union? Yes, it is. Why? Because disjoint union is that union, disjoint union is the union of disjoint sets or union of those sets whose intersection is 5. Okay, so if you pictorially represent disjoint sets, you will see them those sets which have nothing in common, whose intersection is 5. Okay, all right, so I'll stop there. So what we are going to discuss in tomorrow's lecture will be some more set operations and the algebra or the relations we get from these set operations, and we'll try to wind up sets tomorrow. Okay, so I'll stop there. Any questions? Any questions?